This isn't about protests. It's about regime structural collapse, and the winners-losers are regional powers, oil markets, and the future of authoritarian stability worldwide. The headlines have moved on. Iran's uprising is already being filed away as just another Middle East crisis. But the real story is just beginning, because what happened in Tehran, Mashhad, Kermanshah, and dozens of Iranian cities isn't isolated. It connects to four critical nodes: regional power vacuums left by weakened proxies, oil market restructuring as Iranian exports face uncertainty, currency warfare between dollar-based and alternative payment systems, the precedent effect on authoritarian regimes from Moscow to Beijing, and they're all driven by one strategic logic most people are missing. This isn't about street protests or moral outrage. It's about control over energy corridors, financial systems, and the credibility of authoritarian deterrence and positioning for what comes next. Today, I'm going to walk you through the logic, not the personalities, not the slogans, not the press conferences, the mechanics. Three things matter right now. One, Iran's internal security architecture. Who controls the Revolutionary Guard, the army, and whether they'll fire on their own people. Two, regional proxy networks. What happens to Hezbollah, Houthi operations, and Iraqi militias when Tehran's funding dries up? Three, oil pricing leverage, and how Iran's potential collapse affects OPEC dynamics, Saudi positioning, and global energy security. If you understand those three, you understand what Iran's uprising really is. Let me show you what's actually happening. Here's what most coverage is missing. Iran's uprising didn't happen in isolation. It's one move in a regional power contest that's been building for 40 years since the 1979 revolution. Look at the numbers. Official death toll, 646. Independent human rights groups estimate 2,500 to 3,400 plus killed in just 2 weeks. 100 plus security officers killed, according to Iranian state media. An unprecedented loss of regime forces. Internet blackout for 100 plus hours, the longest digital shutdown in Iran's history. 18,400 plus detained. Mass arrests that signal regime panic, not control. This isn't just protest statistics. This is infrastructure collapse. Police stations burned. Barricades holding in multiple cities. IRGC commanders reportedly targeted in their homes. So when you hear Iran protests, understand the context. The Islamic Republic is watching its monopoly on violence fracture, in loyalty, in funding, and in legitimacy. And that fracture isn't abstract. It's military defections, frozen oil exports, currency collapse, militia funding cuts, and regional allies looking for exits. Now let's talk about what this is really about. Not protest size, regime solvency, not casualty numbers, system durability. Here's the mechanic. For 4 decades, the Islamic Republic worked like this. Oil revenue funds the IRGC, which controls 40–50% of Iran's economy through front companies. IRGC money flows to regional proxies. Hezbollah gets $700 a year. Houthis get weapons. Iraqi militias get salaries. Domestic repression maintains the system. Bassage militias crack down. Fear keeps people compliant, but that system is fracturing. The currency collapsed. The rial hit 1,250,000 to $1, an all-time low, making imports unaffordable and wages worthless. Oil exports are stuck, sanctions, infrastructure decay, and now internal chaos make reliable production impossible. IRGC's economic empire is crumbling. When generals responsible for corruption networks are targeted, money flows stop. And then came the red line. People stopped being afraid. When protesters began reportedly marking IRGC homes, storming police stations, and targeting regime infrastructure, the wall of fear collapsed. If that psychological shift becomes permanent, the consequence isn't symbolic, it's structural. If fear reverses direction, repression becomes impossible. If repression becomes impossible, the IRGC's economic rackets collapse. If economic rackets collapse, regional proxies lose funding. That's the threat, not today's casualties, but the precedent. And this is where the messaging gives it away. Supreme Leader Khamenei says protesters are rioters who must be put in their place. Iran's judiciary threatens, "We will hang everyone, we will catch them all." But here's the contradiction. If the regime were truly in control, they wouldn't need internet blackouts. If they had legitimacy, they wouldn't need mass executions to deter resistance. Khamenei projects strength. The judiciary reveals desperation. The reality is in between. The regime may survive this wave through sheer brutality, but it can no longer govern normally, only through permanent crisis mode. This wasn't about restoring order. It was about buying time before the next phase. Now zoom out. Look at the pattern. 2009 Green Movement. crushed but planted seeds 2017-18 economic protests, 1,500 plus killed. Regime holds 2019 fuel protests, 1,500 killed in days. Total shutdown 2022. Mahsa Amini protests, months long. Regime weakened but survived. And now 2026, most violent, most organized, most deadly. These moves share one logic. Each wave erodes regime legitimacy. Each crackdown costs more. Each uprising starts faster. The intervals are shortening. The casualties are rising. The regime's room to maneuver is narrowing. I'm not saying collapse is inevitable. I'm saying the trajectory is clear, and Iran's rivals are watching. So what does this mean for real life? In the short term, oil prices remain volatile. Any Iranian supply disruption sends Brent crude up 5 to 10 barrel regional instability. If Iran can't fund Hezbollah, Israel's northern border changes. If Houthis lose support, Red Sea shipping normalizes refugee pressure. Turkey, Iraq, and Pakistan brace for potential outflows. But markets don't only react to today's supply, they react to expectations. And the expectation now is one of three scenarios. Regime survives but weakened. Brutal crackdown succeeds, but Iran becomes isolated, economically crippled, and regionally impotent, prolonged instability. Neither regime nor opposition wins, leading to years of chaos, Syria-style fragmentation, and proxy interference. Regime change, which would send shockwaves through every authoritarian capital. That's why you're seeing Saudi Arabia and UAE quietly preparing for post-Iran regional order. Israel calculating whether to strike now, or wait Russia and China hedging bets on whether Tehran is still a reliable partner. Here's the risk. Rebuilding Iranian civil society takes decades. It requires stability. And stability is the one variable nobody can guarantee. So now there are three paths. Path 1, brutal restoration. The regime crushes the uprising through mass executions, complete internet control, and total surveillance. Protests die down. Iran becomes North Korea 2.0, isolated, impoverished, paranoid. This is the most likely short-term outcome, but it's also unsustainable long-term. You can't run an economy on pure repression. The regime fractures. IRGC commanders split. Some regions break away. Ethnic minorities, Kurds, Azeris, Baloch, assert autonomy. Iran becomes Libya or Syria, a geographic expression, not a functioning state. This is the nightmare scenario. It would trigger refugee crises, proxy wars, and terrorist safe havens across the Middle East. The military switches sides. A new government emerges, potentially led by exiled opposition like Reza Pahlavi or reformists inside Iran. Iran normalizes, drops nuclear ambitions, rejoins global economy, ends proxy wars. This is the best-case scenario. But it requires what authoritarian regimes rarely allow, a peaceful transfer of power. None of these are clean. None resolve quickly. And what's alarming is the regime hasn't chosen a path. It's just reacting. So let's bring this back to the point. Iran's uprising wasn't about one woman's death, one economic crisis, one internet blackout. It was about 4 decades of repression meeting economic collapse, regional overstretch, and a generation that refuses to be afraid. The regime calls it foreign interference. Critics call it revolution, but the economic logic is consistent. When you can't pay salaries, fund militias, or maintain fear, you lose control. Whether the regime survives depends on variables no one controls. Military loyalty, oil revenue, regional intervention, how long people are willing to die. The story isn't the spectacle, it's the restructuring, and that is what changes everything. So, what are your thoughts on this matter? Is Iran's regime on the verge of collapse, or will it crush this uprising like it has before? Share your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to stay updated on new analyses. Thank you for choosing us.